Good morning, everyone. This is Aaron Skog. I'm the SWAN Executive Director. This is part of our weekly chats. This is a fireside chat for May 26, 2020. Attendance is a little lower than we've seen usually. I'm seeing around 150 attendees. We're expecting a lot of libraries with their moving into their next phase of service. They're starting to return to the library and begin work, but we still have lots of information to share with you. This session will be recorded. We'll go over some topics today as far as the digital card extension. Dawn Tortorella is with me. She'll jump in with a lot more of the details, and we may have a few other staff answer some questions if you submit them online, or we'll unmute. If you need to raise your hand, please go ahead and do so. We'll make sure to keep an eye on that. I'll make sure to do that also. In terms of some questions, we have learned some new things this past week. Good questions have come in, so we've tried to supply answers for everyone based on some individual library questions. And we are also looking at the curbside communicator adoption has been pretty strong so far. We do have videos now, a video overview that's been recorded and posted for you all. So a few other topics here as far as the reopening, and Dawn pulled together some very interesting stats as everything's starting to restart. Thought it'd be good to take a look at those as well, and we'll conclude with an update on our expo. So Dawn, you want to talk about what's going on with these overdue courtesy? These are set to restart?
Yeah, we'll go through a detailed timeline on notices and when things are going to be restarting in a few slides in, but we wanted to just put it on your radar as an alert that starting June 1st, we're going to restart those overdue courtesy and auto renewal notices. The holds notification are not restarting until we get into a little bit later plan. And that has to do with how we're all processing checking out of materials to facilitate curbside. But we'll look at that in just a bit. And we also wanted to let you know that all digital only cards have been extended to August 31st. So you don't have to worry about those early people that got their digital cards. They are on board to having their digital cards extended. In fact, I believe Michael did that update at the end of last week to August 31st. We'll keep looking at that. If we have to extend them, we will. Now, there is an important thing to mention about digital cards. Digital cards do not have the ability to place holds or to check out material. So if you need to be converting those to full access cards, if these new patrons are really excited to start using your curbside service, you're going to have to work out whatever verification you need on your end in order to facilitate that process. But it basically is just whatever you in your library's policies are for verifying a registered patron. You can just go ahead and change their patron profile to one of your patron profiles after you've verified that they're a patron in your service area, and you can then they will then be able to place holds, get curbside service, and all of the services you provide. So there's nothing stopping them from being converted to full-fledged patrons. It all has to do with your internal processes for doing that and how you might verify that, which is a challenge in curbside.
Yeah, as far as the digital, just to remind everybody, we were really looking at the digital as for accessing all the e-content from home. That was its real purpose, and then by design, it was then to get the full-fledged library service to be able to check out and place holds. There would be some verification going on. So there is this, we're kind of stuck between these sort of reopening phases. But this is, really meant as a e-card for e-content.
Yeah, and I'm just now realizing that I forgot to put in a slide of something that I wanted to share with all of you, but I will put it on the COVID resource pages. one library, I don't even know what state they were in, but they had this same kind of online only card, online registration of patrons. And now that they're offering curbside, they want to be able to convert those patrons, but they don't want to get close enough to them to read their verification
Right.
material. So they actually got a $15 magnifier, which is used to magnify either an iPhone, but it works the same way with a card. So somebody could put that up to their car window. You could use the magnifier and actually be able to read it. So we'll post that. There's some creative ways people are getting around that registration and verification of materials. All right, just as another reminder, when you submit your reopening plans and we get your curbside dates, and if you're opting in for curbside communicator, at that time our IT staff have a conversation with you through that help ticket, and they work to customize your receipts, your email receipts, so that they do appropriately reference any information that you want in those tickets or those receipts. So you don't have to open a special ticket for this. It'll be part of that reopening. But if at any time you want to make modifications or need help with those email receipts, just submit a ticket and we'll get to that and update it for you. No questions coming in so far.
No, I'm not seeing any yet.
This might be a short one. All right, so we've had a couple of questions that we want to just kind of verify and talk about. One of them is we've received a couple of requests that people would like to extend due dates by item type. We recommend that due date extensions are across the board for all items. Specific due date extensions based on item types are not recommended. And the reason we don't recommend it is really because patrons are going to have multiple item types out. So then you've got that communication problem of what do you tell the patron their due date is. They then are encouraged to come to the library more times than maybe they would need. Instead of worrying about that due date extension being like an onslaught of materials coming in, we recommend that you extend your due dates further out really than you might desire. Because as soon as you communicate to your patrons that they can return material at their convenience and that your book drops are open, you're going to see a steady stream of that material come in. Because most of us that, behaved like I did, went to my public library, checked out a whole bunch of stuff on those last 2 days. I'm anxious to get that back now. I don't care what the due date is. I want to get that material back to my library. So as soon as my book drop is open, I'm going to return that material. So we just recommend for, unified messaging and accommodating your patrons, it's better to go with this approach.
Hey, Dawn, there's 2 questions that have come in. Maybe I'll just go through those 2 thus far. The first one is coming in. It has to do with that work order that we have through that online form. So basically, as you were covered prior slide, that when you submit the work order that we have in effect, we're trying to make sure that the libraries are having everything in, and we make all the changes on a Tuesday because we need our system to process those changes overnight, and then they go live on a Wednesday. So this is looking at changing the requested date as far as, one that was already submitted. So Leighton's asking if we requested June 8th and we can't start until June 10th, can we change our start date to June 1st still? So I would say we could work that out per library.
Yes, and in fact, that's a good question. Okay, so what happens like when you submit your request to kind of start things up? You almost want to say, request a week earlier in many cases, because then we prep everything, but it doesn't mean really that you're going to be processing anything. So your curbside pickup may not start until a week later, until you're ready. But your pull list will start to be populated. You'll be able to start pulling items. When you check items in, they're also going to trigger those holds. Patrons aren't being notified, but it will show up in my account. So you kind of have to think of all those things that are happening when you do that. And if you find that you're running into problems where you're not getting your pull list populated and you're starting curbside and you need help, send in a help ticket. We'll look at that right away, because we want to make sure that everything is prepped for you so that you're ready when you do start doing curbside.
Two more questions, Dawn, if you don't mind. There's one that's referring to the fact that we picked July 4th as the expiration date of patron records. They make a good point. Noel makes a good point that because libraries are closed that day, these people will lose access, and maybe we should be considering a different date
We
to have those
actually,
expire.
yeah, we're actually looking at that being a perpetual date forward. We don't want anyone expiring their library cards until you guys are open to be able to renew them. So what
Mhm.
we'll do probably mid-June, we're going to take those July 4th and any additional and probably extend them to another date in the future. So
Okay.
the plan is to kind of keep an eye on those target dates. In fact, let me go back to that slide. Yeah, we're going to keep an eye on this target date.
Mhm.
Okay, and as we get into June, we're going to extend those further, because we want to make sure that no patron's record expires while you guys are not open for them to come in and renew.
All right, let's have you keep going.
Okay, so we had a question if the $100 block is still in effect for access to digital content, and it is. So, but let's explain a little bit of how that works and how the system interplays, because there are a lot of factors going into this. We run a nightly report that looks at any patron status of blocked, and if they owe less than $100, we flip their patron status to okay. If you access a patron record in workflows, it dynamically reassesses what that status should be. So if you touch a patron record, it's going to go back to being blocked. If your bill threshold is, let's just say, $15, it's going to reassess and block that patron. So another thing that happens with that is many of our e-content vendor settings are set not only to look at status, but to look at bill threshold. You really want to reassess if that's the appropriate way moving forward. I think this pandemic has opened our eyes to maybe some recommendations for how you should set your e-content vendor blocks, to only look at status if possible,
Right.
because what happens, Overdrive in particular has a bill threshold rule, and it will look at how much the patron owes regardless of what their status is to determine whether or not they should be blocked. Robin, you on the line, you want to offer any other words of advice here?
Sure. So not only Overdrive, but Baker and Taylor and Hoopla both have, when you first set up those accounts, they will have you fill out a form asking for some information about those blocks. So if you have a $7 block, they will check not only the patron status, but also the fine. And I think right now you don't really want to block your ebook users for such a low fine.
Yeah, so kind of think about that.
So
You know,
Dawn, just to recap the problem that we were seeing, and this is just to tell the story where there was a staff person who there were some changes on their account, and then realized after maybe those changes they were like, huh, I'm blocked now. You know, what's going on here? And the real answer is that you could end up with a situation where, let's say, a user will become blocked during the day, but we need time for then our automated script to run that night to do the unblocking. So I think people are assuming that it's somehow we've raised thresholds, whereas all we're doing is we're doing a nightly change.
right. And there have been a few libraries that have decided to also raise their bill thresholds to
Right.
block status. And you can certainly do that at any time. Anytime you want to change your patron profile settings, one of which is being the bill threshold for block, just send in a support ticket and we can do that. But we do know that the majority of the blocking that is happening is not due to our statuses within workflows. They're due to what Robin explained in the setup of the e-content provider.
Right.
So make sure you're taking a look at those.
Yeah, like I was looking at this, we were discussing internally, and I just said more than likely most libraries, it was part of their, overdrive setup years ago, and they picked these settings. And so I think what is good here is Robin's also pointed out, you can make these changes for your overdrive to go in and change your rules, and it's a very good time to consider those rule changes.
Yeah.
So thanks.
And I see a couple more questions here. We have a question, can you do a global change of digital cards to regular patron type with a shortened due date? No, we cannot, because to be a regular patron requires verification, and that's the responsibility of the library to do. That is one reason we've been sending out those daily lists of new online cards. And I know that some libraries have been reviewing those and acting on them daily. They've been reaching out to the patrons to verify information with the patron and converting those to full patron cards. So we can't do it automatically because that really takes away the responsibility of checking on the library's end, which is part of the online registration process to convert to a full patron. We also got a comment that it doesn't look like those library cards have been extended yet to 8/31. So I know that's happening this week. Michael can probably jump in with an update because I believe
Dawn.
Michael's doing it.
Yeah, Dawn, this is Michael. The report is set for June 1st next week is when it's going to happen.
Oh, okay. So it's going to run automatically on June 1st.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Michael. All right, so I had to tell you this happy ticket we got. And I'm not divulging the name in case they want to remain anonymous, but this made us jump for joy. We got a ticket that said, as a thank you for all of SWAN's hard work, we would like to offer curbside service to SWAN employees, which is great because several of us don't, we have several Chicago patrons in our SWAN employ. So this was really nice to know. And I like this picture because you see we're all wearing our PJs. PJs in there. All right, so we appreciate that very much. It made us very happy. Thank you.
Yes, it made me happy as a Chicago resident.
Okay, so let's look at the timeline for restarting notices and billing. We know that with us starting curbside up, while a lot of us are going fine free for now, there are still some libraries that have their regular circulation rules in effect, and we need to make sure that patrons are informed when things are overdue, if they have a courtesy notice saying please return items. So we want those common overdue courtesy and auto renewal notices to start back up. They're going to start back up June 1st. On June 8th, we're going to start back the custom long overdue report. For your patrons, that really doesn't have any impact because that is going to remove lost items that are over 365 days overdue. But that is a critical report for our quarterly billing between libraries. So we want to get that caught up and back on track before July 1 when we go into the next quarterly billing cycle. That doesn't have a patron impact because they've already been billed for those long overdue items. Billing notices will start going out July 6th, and that is because billing notices go out 42 days after due date, so we know we're not going to have anything before July 6th that will be billed. And then July 27th is when we'll start back up the collection reports that individual libraries are running, and Helen will be coordinating that with the libraries and unique management to make sure that that all is on track and caught up. Now, we do not plan to start back hold notices until resource sharing starts again. So it's going to be tied to the phase 4 plan. Aaron, you want to talk any more about the phase plan of the state?
So what's interesting, at least from the standpoint of the library reopening plans, we're using phases, and then SWAN also designed its reopening plan with phases, and then lo and behold, we now have an Illinois plan that's also using phases. So there is some confusion, I think, at points as far as which phases are we talking about? Are we in the library phase, their individual library plan? Are we in the SWAN phase or the state plan? So I'm trying to make sure that, at various points that we clarify if we're referring to the SWAN phase plan. So I think what I'll do is I will include in our COVID-19 page, I'm seeing some more handy graphs, like a chart. So I'll probably include something in there, Dawn, don't you think? Because we've seen some good ones from some libraries, and I think it's a nice at a glance look to see when are we going to restart various parts of our system. Just to make it clear for everyone, because not every library right now is starting curbside. So it's sort of like they're in one phase and some libraries are in another phase.
Yeah. So we'll evaluate that as we move forward, but we really don't see those holds notices being out there until we get a little bit closer to normal processing.
To more of the normal parts of the reopening.
So we do have an update on Curbside Communicator. We are now live with at least 30 libraries, maybe more. When you submit your reopening plan, you can opt in for Curbside, and then that gets set up available for you to coincide with when you're going to be starting that service. There's a welcome email that goes out from Unique that gives you your phone number and your web address. And we have a lot of tools that are available that can be included in the enterprise banner, the Blue Cloud mobile app, and email receipts. So that is all outlined really clearly in the webinar that Stephen and Ian did last week. So you can access that on the SWAN support site. It's Getting to Know Curbside Communicator, and they demonstrated how it actually works both on the admin side and on the patron side. So do take a look at that. It'll be helpful. All right, we want to share some reopening plans, and I'm calling out Elmwood Park here. I got their approval to do this. Lucas has shared some phenomenal resources, and I think he took the approach of, working with some of the recommendations that SWAN had provided and then really tailoring that to the library's needs. And I think that's what everybody needs to do. We have these reopening plans with our member spotlight for Elmwood Park, on our COVID page, and I'll flip to that in just a second. But there's kind of two pieces: the very detailed uh, plan that we've posted on our support site. That is really for staff. In addition, they have published some really clear, great guidelines for the public on their website. So if you go to Elmwood Park Public Library's website, you'll see that they've just really outlined 1, 2, 3 steps, made it very easy for patrons to understand how to work in this curbside environment. But I do want to bring up this page just for you to see. As we continue to get additional resources, we'll make those available. They're all going to live in this COVID-19 information. And under the reopening plans is where we've got the member spotlight on Elmwood Park. So if you go to the Elmwood Park spotlight page, you'll see all 6 of these very detailed instructions. Some of them actually have videos for staff that outline, to me it was so informative to see how they are labeling quarantine pieces coming in and how they're processing those. So it's a really great resource. And also included is the Excel template of how they are handling those holds and pickup service. So they have everything really coordinated.
Yeah, I would say
so
in
Jason
terms.
did this. So Jason,
Yeah, I
kudos.
was just going to say, I think that there's probably more of a collective effort going on at Elmwood Park. So, it's kudos to the staff there. But I
Yeah.
do like is just the fact that folks are, just taking, their phone in a just a very quick way to create a video to walk through what the quarantine area looks like, the use of the signage, the rotation of spaces, the flipping over of signage when things are now ready, just that sort of, overview in addition to all the written documentation, I thought was very good to see. And I would encourage, if libraries are looking at having their staff return, the videos that could be shot and posted ahead of time before staff are setting foot in the building is a really good way to do that. And that's where SWAN also tried to make sure we got videos posted a couple weeks ago to help you start thinking about, what your quarantining plan should look like. Every space is different. Every layout is different. So, we can't get down to that granular detail, but I think, Dawn, you were impressed with how they kind of took our at least suggestions and then, move forward with it in terms of internally how to create their instructions to their
Yeah,
staff.
and Tiffany is sharing that it really is a team effort, and Jason working on the website and Lucas working
Yeah.
on the materials. It's just very impressive. And I will say that your website was called out by Unique Management Services. Actually, they said, "Do you know this library? This is a SWAN
Right.
library, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, yes,
Mhm.
it is." So it's a good model for all of us, and I'm happy that they're sharing that. In
Yeah,
addition, let
thanks
me,
thanks for pulling all that together, Dawn, and sharing that today. I think this isn't to say that there aren't other libraries that haven't done this. This is just one that was shared specifically with us, and we thought we have to share this with everyone else, just as a way to kind of show what you can do.
yeah, and we're happy to set up, a spotlight for anybody
Sure.
who has these resources, because the more we can learn from each other, the better it's going to be for all of us. One of the reopening plans that Erin was kind of mentioning was one that we posted in external plans, and
Oh
it's
yeah, the Orangeville.
Orangeville, California. And this is a little bit more detailed than we were making for the SWAN plan, but it's very appropriate for all of you in, looking at all of these phases. Obviously, change it for the Illinois phased structure, but it's very similar. I think California is being very deliberate and cautious and careful in everything they're doing. And they have the staff implications and then kind of the services and the materials. So it's a
Yeah.
real good breakdown. All right, so let me head back to the slides. So thanks again, Elmwood Park, for sharing that. I'm not sure if you've seen this website yet, but there is a lot of detail coming out from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. And we finally have some guidelines that might be helpful. So let me show you where we have linked those as well. And if we go back to, okay, our COVID-19 reopening plans. And under here, we have the phase 3 recovery guidelines. We have the regional phase dashboard, Illinois plan, and Illinois portal. So those are all linked from within here, but this one is especially, I think, helpful. This is from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. And what's really helpful about this, one, they have this little assistant that will give you access to, you're looking for PPE or you're looking for staff readiness, service counters. It walks you through here, what do you need information on? And you can kind of get additional resources to that as well. But one that I think we can kind of use is the offices. There's guidelines, and you can certainly adapt these general guidelines to how you're going to monitor staff and working in an office environment. And there's also the toolkit. And let's just look at service counters for the toolkit. This might simulate some of what we're looking for curbside, or when you do start offering some limited services, what that would mean. So a lot of good information there that I thought was helpful. So let's talk about our curbside. Aaron and Jenny, I don't know if Jenny's on the line.
Yeah, I'll restart the video. So yeah, so right now I think we've completed our first week of the PPE and curbside. So we have that going on 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the online forms are available, and we'll touch on that. But you know, just like many of you who have nice meeting room spaces, we've commandeered ours since we're not actually meeting in person in our office, and so our big meeting room space that we have for us to use for online training or in-person training or consulting has been taken over for PPE supplies. So one of the things that we've learned is that there's a lot of you who are coming out to Quail Ridge for the first time. So it is a little confusing when you arrive. So we've posted some maps and some directions now on our COVID-19 site for curbside, just so when you arrive, you know where to go. I think that there's some folks expecting that maybe SWAN headquarters was like its own standalone building, and it's an office park. So you're going to have to, get familiar with a little bit of when you come in. We're all the way towards the back, and there's some signage and some paths. So thanks, Dawn, for making the walk-up path map. That'll show you where you need to go. Basically, Ginny's there keeping an eye. She sets out the orders in the foyer. When you're ready to pick them up, you just basically will wave through the window to her and take your orders to go. You can also, contact her ahead of time in case you're running into any issues as far as needing to reschedule or such. But we're not having too many folks arrive at the same time. So I don't think there's really that much risk if you're going to show up when somebody else from a SWAN library is going to be there. So We're making also some restocks of our supplies as well. We have seen, for instance, like those face shields have been pretty popular. But the idea with those is I think that you can, reuse those once you issue those to your staff. Your staff would have those, similar to maybe having a face covering that they'll maintain. But as we get low and it seems like more face shields are needed, I will buy another 500 of those. And right now we're doing the hand gel and the nitrile gloves also through a supplier. And I'll be talking to Amazon Business this week. So let's see what I'll find out also from them as far as any bulk PPE supplies. But my biggest concern was that there's a lot of libraries in SWAN that are looking for some reopening, over the next few weeks. And I wanted to make sure that we were doing our part in keeping you and your staff and the public safe through these supplies. Wow, that is a big drop off on
Whoa,
checkout.
that looks like an earthquake. It kind of was the earthquake. You see, these are checkouts March 1st through May 23rd, and you see like lots of checkouts. We spiked really high.
Oh, that's our
on,
surge. Yeah, that was the
yeah,
surge
that's
when the libraries were
surge. And then
announcing that they were closing, and then the public came in and took everything that they could get their hands on.
yeah, and we're starting to see a little blip. It's not real noticeable compared against the surge, right? But if we
Yeah.
look at checkouts, or these are actually check-ins. We'll look at the detail first. So these are check-ins March 1st through May 23rd, and we're starting to see a lot more check-in activity. We excluded weekends from this because for two reasons. One, we tend to check in fewer items on the weekend, but also we check in more on Saturdays, if that makes sense. And that's because of the discard processing that we do. So we didn't want those kind of peaks and valleys of the weekend to skew this. So we removed weekends, and you do start to see that we're starting to see check-ins, and that's increasing as the book drops open. So that's not real dramatic seeing a growth based on early March. But if we look at it from May 1st, we really are seeing that things are starting to reopen. So here we see the checkouts. Again, we took out weekends just so we could kind of get a sense for how things are gearing up. And you do see that we're starting to move up and up. A little lower on that Friday before a holiday, but that's pretty typical. So checkouts are starting to build, as are check-ins. So we're starting to see that libraries are starting to offer services, and there's some activity. We'll keep monitoring these so you can actually see kind of what's going on over time. And as we see more libraries offering services, that will start to increase. We early on shared some of the data about the online card registrations, and this is just a snapshot of some of all of the libraries that had more than 50 online cards registered during this time period. So the largest, Oak Park, took over Tenley, so you guys are back in dual form here. 414 cards were created for Oak Park, 360 for Tenley, and we have a lot of libraries. I think over 25 libraries that have 50 or more online patrons registered during this. So I think that's a great visual. Over 3,500 accounts so far created for online users. All right, so just a recap. We're still waiting to hear for somebody wanting to present on their online book discussion, school library partnerships, summer reading, online programming. We heard from board members on Friday that Participation rates for online events and programs are through the roof. So it would be great to hear what you're all doing in that area and how much you've reached your communities. As I'm sure you're feeling the same connection with your communities virtually as we are with all of you. So it'd be nice to just have an update. Anybody want to volunteer? You can send in a request to present a SWAN-X. Tomorrow we do have our virtual outreach services, so we're excited to hear about those from the St. Charles Public Library team. And then on June 15th, Ange is going to tell us about their use of Collection HQ for collection development and making informed decisions that are data-driven. Okay, the checklist of what you need to be keeping track of, and this is on, let me just show you the page where you can get to quickly to make sure you've updated these. If information changes, feel free to resubmit this. We'll compare it against information we have for you and reach out to you to coordinate that. So on the COVID-19 page under curbside planning, okay, we have outlined our 3 work order request forms. And those are the work order request forms that automatically go to our support system, and we then will coordinate your opening dates and service requests. That includes the curbside communicator, and coordinating with you if you want those customized email receipts. Due date extension request form, if you want to extend your due dates further, submit that report. Know that you kind of need to do this before June 8th because that's when all due dates are June 3rd. June 3rd. That's when due dates are coming up. So if you want to extend those, get those in. And then ordering the PPE for your staff. All right, Aaron, I'm going to let you close up and take it out.
So as I said at the start, we're going to be moving to every other week. I think it's clear just based on the attendance that we're having in these fireside, while they're valuable. I think that there's more and more staff that are working. It seems appropriate to sort of scale back the frequency of these. We'll still keep these going, but there'll be 2 set in June, and we're also using this period to have some of our staff take a little scheduled time off. It's been kind of a long haul for all of you as it is for all of us. We've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. So I want to thank the SWAN staff that are tuned in here listening. And the firesides at least will continue on through June, but not nearly at the frequency. I don't know, do we want to rename them poolside? I feel like maybe we need to.
We can ponder that.
Okay. And Tiffany's asking about the quarterly. Yeah, we're still going to have the quarterly meeting for the library directors. I've got a draft agenda that I ran through the board meeting on Friday last week. And so I will be finishing that up and posting it. The quarterly is for library administrators and directors. We will be using the other type of online meeting that we have that is limited to a number of users. So I'm really going to emphasize that this is really an opportunity for us, just our subset of library directors and administrators, to tune in, and I'm going to want you all talking to each other. It's going to be the few opportunities we have where all the libraries are together, and we'll have some questions and some sharing. So it's more of an online networking opportunity for the directors. Follow-up questions, of course, we conclude every fireside with this. If you need any help or you have questions that you think of during this session, but you didn't get in to our Q&A part of the webinar, you can send those into help@swanlibraries.net. And again, the ticketing system for SWAN is very helpful for us and for you, that we can track everything that you submit via those work order forms goes into the ticketing system, and we can hand those off to individuals depending on if they have any scheduled time off. We'll make sure that you're not, if you're reaching out to someone directly, that's fine to do that, but just know that you may run into somebody that's taking a little time off. So the ticketing system we can hand off and delegate. Anything else, Dawn?
No, I think that's it. We do have a question that just came in that is anyone thinking about how they might do voter registration, perhaps outside? That is a great discussion for the online forums.
I was just going to say, yeah.
That is something we probably should be thinking of, those types of things coming up too. Yeah, so thanks for that question. All right, everybody, we're going to stop the recording.